Kelly, they're into property. This book talks about long-term investing, value investing for the long term. What time is going to be considered as long term?
Do you have a long time to hear my answer? Long term requires a long answer.
Yes.
But let me just start by saying that when I chose my wife, because you brought up the subject, and I'd like to honor her being here today, and my daughter to support me. When I chose her, I knew instantly the moment I saw her that that woman was going to be my wife.
Wow.
When I saw her, she was across the room as far as she is now. I was 18 years old, still at school. She lived in the Soviet Union. I did not speak a word of Russian. She did not speak a word of English. And yet I knew that that was going to be my wife. And I told my best friend, I'm going to marry that woman, on the spot. She didn't know it yet. It took some weeks for me to communicate to her, but she was not interested. She left back to the Soviet Union and left her telephone number and the city where she was from. I told my father I'm leaving to the Soviet Union to find her. He disowned me. I sold all my property and bought a ticket and flew there. With nothing more than a shirt that I was wearing, not even a jacket, in the middle of winter. And the rest is history. We've been together since 1991. We've been married almost 30 years. And we have a beautiful daughter as the product of our love. And I can honestly say that I committed myself for the long term when I saw her. Because I knew to have a wife is a good thing, as it says in the Bible. But it's also a permanent relationship. It's not something to be taken lightly. And I was very young, but I knew that was my purpose, to get her as my wife. And everything that happened in my life thereafter, the riches that I've made, the success I've had, is secondary to the love that I had for her. The love that I had for her was my motivation to get her. And once I had her, I had to find a job because I dropped out of school. My parents were not helping me. I had to find accommodation to live. So, my mom says that when you need something, it's the mother of necessity that creates the ability to be able to succeed. So I think the need that I had to be able to provide, the fact that my father had left me on my own, he'd given me a one-way ticket, £100 the year before. I was living on my own. I became independent at 17. So I had to fend for myself. And if we come back to the long-term goals now, looking at investment.
Oh, let's be clap hands for that. Oh, God. We're still listening. I think you're going on and on.
So just as an introduction, the long-term goals, I think Alfonso's book is really critical at this time in Zimbabwe. It doesn't come as a surprise to me that I'm here speaking today. I had no idea that I would be here today on this day in March. And I had no idea how relevant this subject was, not only to everyone in this room, but also to myself individually and the company that I represent. I'm wearing the hat Westbrook, because we are about to embark on something that is incredibly important for the nation of Zimbabwe. And we'll make the announcement on Monday at 11 o'clock. I just invited my brother Fortune. I've actually known Fortune from the day I started business. I haven't seen him for many years, and I've missed him. But when I started out with nothing, he knew me. He was my lawyer. And I've invited him to that event, and I invite everyone here, please come at 11 o'clock on Monday to the Celebration Center to that event, because exactly the subject of long term is what we are talking about. And when I say long term, I mean not for tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or even 10 years time. For me, that is not long term. What for me is long term is what we do today, how does it affect the next generation? Because we're in a country of much difficulty. We've come from a zero-basis economy. When our economy was dollarized, we had no capital in this economy. The Reserve Bank doctor will confirm that the capital of the banks together collectively was maybe $28 million in 2009. Look at where we are today. Our economy was $12 billion. We are now almost $40 billion. With no help from any FDIs, with no help from the outside world, with sanctions on the country, we've almost tripled, more than 3 times increased our economic development of this country. So if we can make progress under these circumstances, in these times, imagine what is possible in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years' time. So please, people, don't look at what's happening today around you. Set your goals on the long term. To build a home, I'm in property development, it takes years. It took me 15 years to get the planning that I now have to build properties on our land. 15 years of investing tens of millions of US dollars, with a huge risk that we could have lost everything. But here we are now with our land zoned, with our land given EIA certificates, with our land being subdivided with compliance certificates, with our land that has homes on it, permanent homes. We have sold more than 1,000 homes in the last 4 years. We're selling almost 50 a month in this economy. And I'm not talking of high density homes or cost effective or low cost housing. I'm talking of luxury homes in expensive areas like Florida. So when we look at the capital markets, I think it's exactly the same model. We have gone from no economy to a cash economy. Right now our society is using cash. Most of it is US dollars. We can argue if it's 70 or 80% US dollars, but it's US dollars. And it's there to stay because it's the only way people can hedge against inflation. Unfortunately, the RTGS has huge local inflation on it, but the US dollar has no inflation. So when they talk of Zimbabwe having high inflation of 200 or 300%, it is lies. We do not have that inflation in Zimbabwe because people are using US dollars. And the price of Coca-Cola 4 years ago in US dollars was more expensive than it is today in US dollars. And that is a fact, I've studied it. So if we look at the US dollar economy and we look at the securities exchange where people are investing their money, I agree that, and I'm not as passionate about you, my brother T.S. I'm sure you have a lot more to say on the stock market. But if I look at the ZSE, with all respect to the ZSE, it doesn't provide enough safe haven for people to take the money they've got from their mattresses, from their boxes, and put it into the stock market. The same as the banks. People have lost trust in the banking system. And we have to encourage people to start investing again, because any economy is built on savings. And in this economy, we don't have enough savings. And we can't keep waiting for the international community and the donor world to bring money to this country. It's not going to happen. We have to start building this country together on our own. And the sooner we can start saving, the sooner the economy can be kick-started again. And one of the best saving models is the stock exchange. I just received this from the CEO of the Victoria Falls Exchange, and it's a long presentation of 28 pages, but I just wanted to read this part because it is a security exchange where equities can be traded, commodities, debt, and real estate investment trust. It is in US dollars. It is the only exchange in US dollars in Africa. It is the first exchange to be established in a special economic zone created by government, which is tax-free. It's 100% owned by the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And it kickstarts the offshore financial center to attract global investment. So what I'm saying is that the long term of Zimbabwe cannot exclude an exchange like the Victoria Falls Exchange. It has to form a major part of our economy, because the trust can be re-established by domestic investors to invest into that exchange and know that the dollars, the US dollars they're investing today, tomorrow, next year, in 10 years' time, those same investments will be safe. And the securities that they invest into, if they choose the securities wisely, will still be there at a higher value than when they invested. Plus, they're likely to receive returns of dividends. So when I talk of long-term goals, please, can we look at a longer term than 1 year or 5 years or even 20 years? I recently was able to go to Harvard Business School, and I completed a 4-year study.
Clearly, I have a lot to say.
Just 30 seconds. After investing $200,000 in my degree, by the way, I dropped out of school at 18, I didn't finish high school. But Harvard invited me to come and study there, an equivalent of an MBA program, OPF, for 3 years. And the pinnacle of that study, everything that I've learned in business in 30 years, everything that we think is important in business, and the vision statement for this is so good, I love it, the mission statement. But without a strategy statement, those things cannot help you to be successful. And the final exam, if you want to call it that, was our corporate strategy statement, which we've developed for Westprop. And that is a statement to 2030, to 2050. For the next 27 years, we know as a company that we're putting 1 billion bricks in the ground of Zimbabwe.
Wow.
And everyone in the company is focused towards that 27-year goal. So long term, yes, I can talk all day about it. Thank you.